from me, Henry and Nipper. Now, if you like tonight's bedtime story, don't forget, press the like button and subscribe. It costs nothing to subscribe, but gives you notifications every time me, Henry and Nipper post a new video. Now, before we start tonight's story, don't you think Nipper looks beautiful in her unicorn outfit with purple matching booties and hoodie topped with this spangly shiny horn? Now, are we snuggled in, children, ready for tonight's story, which is Thumbelina, the story of a very, very small girl the size of your thumb. Once upon a time, there was an old woman who lived in a cottage on a hill all by herself. She never had any children of her own. No one ever came to visit, and thus the woman took caring for her garden of beautiful flowers. Eventually, not even the old woman's garden would keep her from feeling lonesome. One day, as the old woman was watering her bright red roses, a witch came by, walking up the hill to the woman's house. The old woman was very skeptical of witches because she'd heard all about them. She'd heard that they liked apples and beans and tried to sell them. However, this witch seemed much nicer than what the old woman imagined. They talked for a long time and each grew fond of each other. The woman finally told the witch that she had grown lonely in her old age. The witch, feeling sorry for the old woman, gave her a special seed for free. Ooh. The witch told her to plant the seed in her best soil, to watch her seed with her clearest water, and give her seed some extra love. The old woman did what the witch asked. She planted the seed in a small pot with the finest soil. She watered the seed with fresh rainwater, and one day, when the beautiful pink flower had sprouted up from the dirt, the old woman kissed its closed petals. Suddenly, the flower petals opened up, and inside sat a small girl with long golden hair. She was no larger than the old woman's thumb. So the old woman named her Thumbelina. She took great care of Thumbelina as her own daughter. She made her a bed out of a polished walnut shell, and each night she gathered flower petals from her garden for Thumbelina to use for warmth. Thumbelina would sing the old woman to sleep with the most beautiful singing voice. After hearing Thumbelina's lovely voice one summer night, a large toad hopped up onto a window. Hop, hop, hop. Once Thumbelina had fallen asleep, the toad crept in through the window. "Oh my, this one will make the perfect wife for my son," she exclaimed. The toad grabbed Thumbelina in the walnut shell and carried her off to the nearby river. Once near the river, the toad said to her son, "Gaze at my lovely bride, I found you." "Croak, croak, croak," was all the son could reply. Proudly the mother took the sleeping Thumbelina to a patch of lily pads and placed her on the smallest one available. She then went back to where her son was now lying in a large puddle of mud, and the two then began to construct a house of mud and reeds to fit the new bride. Thumbelina awoke to the sound of hops and croaks, and immediately began to sob at the thought of her mother all alone, without the company of being sung to sleep. Two orange fish heard Thumbelina weeping and saw the lily pad she was sitting on. "We should help her," both said at the same time. Immediately they swam over to Thumbelina's lily pad and chewed at her lily stalk until she broke free. "Oh, thank you so much," Thumbelina exclaimed, waving goodbye to the fish as she began to float away downstream. As Thumbelina travelled down the river, her heart was filled with all the wonders of the world outside. She saw beautiful stars in the sky, she heard the sounds of crickets chirping, and she could smell the lovely aroma of flowers surrounding the river's edge. Suddenly, a beautiful purple butterfly flew next to her. Following her path down the river, Thumbelina gazed in surprise at the butterfly's magnificent wings flapping beside her. She cried out in joy and clapped her hands as the butterfly flew off into the rising sun. Thumbelina yawned and fell asleep once more until the sun had risen high above her. When she woke, she found herself at the river's edge, in a land even farther away from her dear old mother. Thumbelina even tried to ignore her sadness during the summer months by surrounding herself with all the flowers and the sun she could find. She became friends with the butterflies and the dragonflies and bumblebees. She could hear the chirping of the birds above her. She was happy once more again. But once autumn came, all the winged creatures began to fly away, leaving Thumbelina by herself. At once winter came, Thumbelina became very cold and even more alone. She could only warm herself with the dried leaves that had fallen off the trees during autumn. One very, very snowy day, Thumbelina had become so cold and hungry that she decided to search for shelter and something to eat. She wandered farther than she'd ever had in the meadow beside the field. There she found a small hole beside a tree. She climbed inside and was surprised to find a mouse standing in a large room filled with pebbles and corn. "Come inside, dear, you're shaking, I will warm you up. You will stay with me," the field mouse said. The field mouse was exceptionally kind to Thumbelina. She fed her all the corn Thumbelina desired and gave her a warm place to live and sleep. In return, the mouse asked that Thumbelina tend to the chores and tell her stories. Thumbelina told the mouse all the stories of her travels, and eventually the mouse loved to be sung to sleep as well. One morning Thumbelina woke to the sounds of the field mouse scurrying around in a panic to spotlessly clean the hole in which they lived. When Thumbelina questioned this, the mouse replied, "Our neighbour has been coming to visit. He's a very important visitor. He is very rich. He wears a shiny black coat made from the finest velvet and will make the perfect husband for you. Unfortunately, he is blind, for he is a mole." The mole visited later that day, and the mouse told Thumbelina to tell him a story. Thumbelina did. The mole became very fond of Thumbelina. Then the mouse urged Thumbelina to sing for the blind mole. Thumbelina did this. The mole immediately fell in love with Thumbelina. He began to visit the mouse's hole daily and often invited Thumbelina to walk through the tunnels he'd built. Thumbelina reluctantly did so, but only to make the field mouse, who had been so kind to her, happy. "Don't mind that bird, it just lays in the middle of the tunnel, the stupid thing. It's gone and dead," exclaimed the mole. Thumbelina was filled with great sadness at the sight of this beautiful bird lying in the middle of a dirty tunnel. The mole kicked the bird grumpily as he walked past it. "Come, come," he called to Thumbelina. "I will be back for you," Thumbelina whispered to the bird. She spent the rest of the day with her mole, very unhappy. That night Thumbelina tried to sleep, but all she could think about was the poor bird lying in the mole's tunnel. She crept quietly as not to wake the field mouse. She grabbed her bedsheet, which the mouse had knitted for her out of corn leaves and soft down, and ran through the tunnel to the bird. She covered the meek animal as much as she could. She wept quietly and hugged the bird. Suddenly she could hear the bird's heartbeat. Ba-boom, 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 ba-boom. Thumbelina gasped as she saw the bird's eyes open. The bird was not dead. The winter's air had only froze the bird's heartbeat. Her blanket had warmed the bird back to life. For the rest of the winter, Thumbelina nursed the bird back to full health. She kept this hidden from the field mouse and the mole, while they secretly planned to marry her off to the mole himself. Once spring came round again, the ground began to warm up, and the bird was back to full health, just in time to leave the hole for summer. He asked Thumbelina to join him in the warm sun, flying around all day, surrounded by the flowers and other birds. Thumbelina truly wished that she could, but she remembered how the kind field mouse had been to her during her time of need. Thus Thumbelina sadly declined the bird's offer. She wept as each one bid farewell to each other. The birds wished her the best of luck, and Thumbelina stood at the entrance of the hall as she watched him fly away, the sun shining splendidly in her face. One day when Thumbelina was tending the chores of the mouse's hole, the field mouse said, "The mole has announced that he would like to marry you. I will help. I will make you the nicest wedding dress. You will lavish, and you will live lavishly all your life with your new husband." The field mouse rounded up a group of spiders to weave the linen for Thumbelina's wedding dress, and other linens for her future life with the mole. All the while ignoring Thumbelina's protests, they continued to work on it. Thumbelina was not happy, and much more would rather wish to live outside in the sun than in the dark and a cold hole with a blind, boring mole. When the autumn arrived, Thumbelina sat on the edge of the hole and gazed at her beloved son lolling in the cornfield. She saw leaves upon the ground, and her heart filled with his son's sadness. Thumbelina began to sob. She told the field mouse that she did not wish to marry the mole. The mouse scampered around, ignoring Thumbelina's sadness. "You will live a good life with the mole. Don't be ungrateful. You're lucky to have such a nice mole with such a nice velvet jacket who wants to marry you," she stated. Thumbelina became even more sadder than ever and waited, dreading the day of her marriage. One morning she gazed up at the late autumn sun with tears in her eyes as the thought of never seeing it again. Suddenly she saw the bird that she had rescued. It flew down and landed beside her. The bird informed Thumbelina that he would be flying away for winter to the land of summer, where the sun was always shining and the birds sang beautiful songs just like Thumbelina. He once more asked Thumbelina to fly away with him. Without thinking twice, Thumbelina hopped on the bird's back and the two flew towards the sun. They travelled for days across the large mountains filled with snow, beautiful green fields, and patches upon patches of brilliant flowers. Finally, they arrived at a large flower-filled meadow. The air was warm, the sun was brighter than Thumbelina had ever seen. The bird landed on a high tree in a nest. "You are more than welcome to stay with me, Thumbelina, but I suspect you would enjoy being surrounded by the flowers below," he said. Thumbelina nodded and kissed the birds on the feather. The bird swooped to the flowery meadow below and placed Thumbelina on a large pink flower, much like the one she came from. All of a sudden, behind the pink petal emerged a crowned man, just a little bit larger than Thumbelina herself. He was alarmed at the size of the bird, but once he saw Thumbelina standing next to it, he approached Thumbelina and immediately fell in love with her glowing happiness and the way her golden hair shone in the sun. After spending many happy weeks together in the sunshine, he placed his brilliant crown upon Thumbelina's head and smiled warmly at her. He asked her to be his queen of the fairy kingdom. Thumbelina pondered for this for a moment. The fairy king was the first man to ask her. He was kinder to her than both the toad and the mole put together. She agreed to be his queen. Seeing how happy Thumbelina was in the fairy king's presence, the bird flew off and promised to return often to visit Thumbelina. Well, once Thumbelina and the fairy king joined as king and queen, all of the flowers in the meadow each blossomed open to reveal one or two fairies sitting inside. At the wedding, the fairy kingdom rejoiced in the king and queen's newfound happiness. Thumbelina sang a beautiful song for all to hear. She was given many gifts, but her most favourite was a pair of gorgeous wings that reminded her of the butterflies she'd first seen at the beginning of her journey. The kingdom danced in the sunlight, drank sweet nectar, and befriended many of the birds that nestled in the trees above the Thumbelina. During the hot days, the butterflies and dragonflies kept Thumbelina cool with their wings in the evenings. Thumbelina sang her fairy king and the rest of the kingdom to sleep with her beautiful song. Eventually, all of the birds picked up on her song and sang along with her. The bird that Thumbelina had rescued was always sad to leave Thumbelina, but he travelled and travelled to promise that he would always come back and see her, no matter where he was in the world, and would spread her story to the world. One day he flew to an old woman's cottage on a small hill and sang Thumbelina's song. The old woman immediately recognised the song as Thumbelina's, as she was Thumbelina's long-lost mother. Her loneliness was forever removed, for she knew that Thumbelina was feeling safe and living happily ever after. Far away in the sun, if the old woman missed her dream, Thumbelina she would go to her window and see a bird perched on a tree, chirping Thumbelina's song. Well, children, wasn't that a lovely bedtime story? So from me, Henry, nighty-night, children. Nighty-night, children. Nighty-night.